And Dr. Johnson, your story is a little different, right? As I recall, you had to navigate your way through more than one system and community. Talk to us about your experiences in both Concord, North Carolina, and New York City.
Oh, that's an interesting way to grow up, quite honestly, because in Concord, I lived in a segregated community. And it was very homogeneous, very insular. But it seemed to me, like Pastor Curtis, we got everything that we needed to thrive personally and socially and academically. It wasn't until my family moved to New York for a better way of life that some of the educational shortcomings that I experienced came to fruition. And I had to compete in a different environment totally. And although I was equipped, I think, with the foundation, I still needed to figure out a way to get up to speed with kids who were perhaps a little bit more academically adept than I was. So my mother, who was among my staunchest supporters, encouraged me to go to after-school programs, participate in speech contests, to be engaged in the world of ideas and the life of the mind through reading, and we did a lot of that. So as a result of the foundation that I developed in Concord and the additional exposure that I received in New York, I think I was able to create an opportunity for myself to compete at a higher level. So I think it was my community and my family that really provided me with the impetus to move into the arenas that I am in today.
Great, thank you. So with these stories as a backdrop, let's focus now on some of the specific themes that emerged throughout the interview process. Dr. Curtis, you introduced us to the concept of the law of first mention. We thought that was really fascinating, something that we are going to incorporate into our research lexicon. And it really refers to one's ability to search back in one's memory as far as when a truth was first revealed. I think that's how you described it. In your educational accounts, you talked about strong encouragers, or those people in your life that planted seeds of encouragement that helped you realize your full academic potential. Can you talk to us about how and why you think encouragers are essential success factors?
I think the foundation is an understanding that words are powerful, and the people who speak into your life have some stewardship responsibility as to how you broaden your horizons and how your dreams and visions are shaped. And I was blessed and fortunate to have people in school as teachers, in the community as anonymous mentors and encouragers who spoke truth. And then being called to ministry young, because I acknowledged my call at 15, even when you wanted to stray, the community took responsibility for making sure that you were protected because you were called to a different path. So when everybody else was thinking about doing something and I was eager to go, it was like, no, you can't go. You have to stay back. And it was almost as if they were saying to me, we are investing in your future, even if it's not the future we're choosing for ourselves. So encouragers are important because words are powerful, and how people speak into your life becomes significant. I cannot remember any person that I hold as an icon or a signpost, Malcolm Gladwell would call it. I can't remember them ever saying anything negative to me or ever saying to me that I couldn't do something.
That's powerful. And actually, you all talked about encouragers, and that surfaced as a recurring theme, encouragers, mentors. So Dr. Davis, Dr. Johnson, can you talk to us about the role and the significance of role models or encouragers as success factors for African American males?
Well, in preparing for this discussion this evening, I reflected on my life to identify those individuals who had a significant effect on what I am and who I am today. And I first count my maternal grandparents, Willie and Marion Johnson. My grandmother didn't go past the 4th grade, but she was one of the brightest people I have ever known. And she taught me the importance of engaging in our communities and also giving back in meaningful ways. My grandfather was the only one in the family who could vote. My grandmother could not vote early on. And every election Tuesday, despite being crippled in an accident, every first Tuesday of November, he would put on his Sunday best, and with cane in hand, he would walk 4 miles to uptown Concord, North Carolina, and cast his vote. So my early remembrance of a person, of an encourager, was certainly my maternal grandparents. But back to Dr. Curtis's point, these individuals don't have to spend a lot of time with you like grandparents. It's their words that speak volume with respect to what your capabilities are and what the possibilities. So in some instances, people just had to say one thing to me about what my capacities are. And I think throughout our lives, we need reinforcement because, quite honestly, we don't know what we can possibly do. One thing I did want to say, Dr. Crowley, was that when I spoke about the African American community in Concord, North Carolina, I want to assure you that it was nourishing and encouraging. But once in a segregated community, you moved outside of that, then you were exposed to the kinds of bigotry that existed during that time. I don't know about you, Larry, but when I was growing up in Concord, we could not sit in the movie theater on the first floor. We had to go up to the balcony. And also, if you went to a department store, you could not try to clothes on. You had to purchase them and take them home, and if they did not fit, then that was your problem. So my grandmother, my mother, would always buy our clothes 1 or 2 sizes too large in the event, they didn't fit. She could still take them up. But I found the African American community, and I don't want to belabor this, Rex, because I think you want to move beyond this point, but I found the African American community growing up where I lived in my small town of Concord very supportive. However, once you move beyond that, there's a certain set of skills and competencies that you have to develop in order to operate in a global society. And I think that's important for young people who reside in our communities to learn today, that you have to be able to operate in a global environment, and you have to develop the skills in order to do that.
Dr. Davis, strong encouragers.
You know what? My background is very different. Actually, for some years now, for a very long time, have wanted to go back to my high school. I wanted to go back to my high school. I wanted to go back to the most distinguished alumni. That's what I wanted to do. But I wanted to go back and say to them that you can do this. I'm really an urban kid. I grew up really in an urban environment. I am a lot more like the kids that are not graduating than those that did. I'm the only one of my friends to graduate from high school, period. One of my colleagues at WashU asked me once, she said, do you know anybody in prison? And I thought, are you joking? I didn't know anybody who graduated from high school. So the environments that we talk about are really, it's like I say about black social scientists, that you're really sort of both subject and experimenter. And that's what really, I think, which makes black researchers different than most white researchers. That you really sort of know the population because you are the population. And you're trying to change the population of which you are a part. So when some kid comes up to me and talks to me about urban life, I know a lot about urban life. I mean, in fact, I always wanted to, I used to have fantasies of running an all-boys school, a real academy. It would be tough, because I would speak to them. I would ask them, what language would you like for me to speak in? Because I am very fluent in both. and people who know me well know that's the case. Occasionally will pull somebody aside. Somebody will say something to me. They'll say, one guy said to me, well, Larry learned how to pulled in college. And I had to pull him aside and say, hey, brother, you're talking to the wrong guy. But at the same time, I'll square up, you know, if need be. I'll be very polite and talk to in a language that's appropriate. But I really do feel I have some connection with today's youth or kids. Times have changed somewhat, but the community I was in was not as tough and candor as the community today. We didn't have AIDS, and we didn't have crack. But we had different drugs, prostitution, vice, murders weren't as great, but it was still sort of a hostile, unforgiving environment. It was a working class. Where I'm from was a town like Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh made steel, we made iron. Saginaw had the largest iron factory in the world when I was a kid. Now it's nothing there. So my hometown is absolutely decimated. Part of Flint, Saginaw, Pontiac, that whole eastern border of Michigan has just been devastated with General Motors' demise. So anyway, you know, it was a different place, and I didn't, my home was safe. I was sort of, never thought about being protected. I had so many people around me who supported me. Of course, like everybody else, you know, your mom was the greatest supporter and all that, but everybody did. I don't remember anything ever bad happening to me. I was always fortunate. I was talking to a guy, he gave me a ride up here, and I was reading something about bullying, and I said, when I was a kid, there was no such thing as bullying. You were just on your own, you know. I wish they would have had some bullying rules when I was a kid, because I was up, you know, that's why I learned how to run pretty fast, because I was never a very big kid, so I was always under siege, you know. So anyway, in terms of the you know, the thing that sort of, but I did have some very important mentors. I was very fortunate to have had not only my own father, but two other surrogate fathers. And I don't know, maybe you're going to get there. I don't know how you know, what order you're going to ask these questions, who really served as role models. So it was never, despite the fact that I didn't engage, the reason I wanted to go back and look this thing, go back to my high school, is because I was not a good student. I guess I was smart enough, but the environment I was in, no one cared about that. No one cared about being a smart kid. In fact, it was something that was undervalued. It was a tough kid. No one cared about me being smart. And I never thought I was particularly smart, because I didn't have any forum to, you know, and still have doubts at times. You know, you just didn't have a place to sort of do that, you know. But anyway, it sort of worked out all right. But most of the people, in fact, I at times have survivor's guilt. When I go back to my hometown, people say to me, oh, you know, you did good, you did good. And I feel badly in some respects, because most of the people I know didn't make it. I'll tell you this one story. I won't tie this up very long. I'm in the process of writing this book. It's called, it's a personal history of race and social science. And it's the social science I've used to explain phenomena. One of my best friends was in prison. I was at Michigan getting my master's in psychology at the time. I went to visit him at Michigan prison. Jackson was the world's largest walled prison. So I went to visit him. I used to go visit him all the time. So they found out that I was getting this degree, and they invited me. They said, hey, would you like to get a job here? And they said, well, you're waiting for your friend to come down. You know, would you like a tour of the prison? So sure. You know, I'd always just gone into the prison, waited for him to come down and talk to him, and left. So I said, sure, I'd love to have a tour. So before he could come down, they took me on the tour. So we walked into the cafeteria, and some guy said, hey, Larry, what's happening? We walked up into the yard, and a whole group of guys said, hey, Larry, oh, how you doing? And the guy said, how do you know all these guys? I said, they're my friends. So I survived, and then the thing, you know, I survived tremendous odds. It's like I personally feel this. I really do. I really feel, I mean, good thing, you know, I had good people, but I was terribly lucky. I mean, I feel like I walked through a minefield and somehow made it. I feel like, one, I like LeBron James the other night on TV, they asked him something. He says, I'm not supposed to be here. When he said that to me, he said he has some idea of who he is. Right. Anyway.
Right. Well, it's interesting because this theme of encourager was so prominent in the interviews that it's without question that it is a success factor that we will continue to explore as a think tank. I know that in the audience somewhere is my junior high band instructor, who was an encourager for me because he was the only African-American male in the school. And so when you talked about those experiences, we all talked about sort of the law of first mention. When I think about outside of family being encouraged, it was Lee Gillison who, pulled me aside and said, when everybody else was acting like knuckleheads, I expect more from you. And back then, corporal punishment was legal. And he was a Kappa. He was a Kappa, so he liked to swing wood. But, it was that sense of he expected me to do well in junior high school. So, Lee Gillison, wherever you are, I thank you for being that strong encourager for me. It's almost impossible to talk about strong encourager outside of this sense of environment and community. And all of you talk so passionately about this sense of where you came from and remaining connected to that and not necessarily glamorizing it, because I think we all can talk about the negatives associated with our hoods. But this whole notion of environment is a success factor that I think we need to explore. Can you talk to us about environment and the impact that environment has on academic success? And you can go wherever you'd like to go with that.
Well, Alex excluded me when he was talking about his 1897 experience, so I was going he just left me all out of that. And he did, Larry, you remember when we, and So Alex, why don't you start?
Well, I'm getting ready to say, do I have a choice? Apparently not. You're absolutely right. An environment does have, I think, a significant role to play in who and what you are. And it could have a negative effect, and it can have, of course, a positive effect. I think the negative effect is that if you don't have aspirations and you don't have encouragers who can perhaps cultivate those aspirations, then I think it becomes an issue for you. Your environment is an issue. If you don't, then what you're going to do is fall prey to the status quo, and you want to be like everybody else. So these encouragers in these environments are so critical. That's why I believe strongly in programs like the Be a Sixth Grade Mentor Program or the Black Male Leadership Development Institute. What we do in those organizations is recognize that there are a core group of individuals who have the capacity to really, really do some great things, not only in our communities, but throughout the state and the nation, if God willing. And we have to bring those individuals, like your teacher did you. You need to bring them to the side. And sometimes only one word makes a difference. I remember my dad, and my dad is actually my stepdad. He married my mom when I was 2 years old, so for a while I was reared by a single parent with a bunch of aunts and my grandmother helping. But my stepdad, and we didn't talk much. I remember in the 6th grade I was acting out in school because I wanted to be like everybody else. And when my mother told him, the one thing he said to me, he said, "Be good." That's all he had to say. And from that point on, I said, look, I'm going to really, really live up to this man's expectations, even though his only expectation of me was to be good. So you don't need to have someone around you on a constant basis helping you make a determination about what it is you ought to be doing. Sometimes a single word can help. In an environment that our young people grow up in sometimes, they need that encouragement. I've been in the schools, and sometimes that's a really, really difficult place for kids nowadays. There's a lot going on there that I hope that we could resolve at some point in time. But we really need to reach out and help these young people who have potential to do great things. Otherwise, they're going to be swallowed by an environment that does not provide them with the support that they need to be successful. Okay, Reverend Curtis, it's your time.
I agree. I think environment is critical. And I don't want to over-glorify the past because there's so much that's great about now and so much that's great about the prospects for the future. But there were things that were present in my upbringing that were priceless. All teachers lived in the neighborhood. The neighborhood was kind of a closed-in environment. You're community cinema was there. You went out to perhaps shop, but you came back in. All the kids played together. You knew when somebody needed rent help or mortgage help because we were selling popsicles and having community block parties to raise money. And parents took ownership of everybody's kids. You ended up at whatever house had food after school until your parents came. And you didn't have Google, the internet, and accessibility to the world. So your whole perspective was shaped by the block in which you lived and the school that you went to. So mentors and encouragers took education very serious. And then for me, the other outlet was church. And church was the center of the community, and it had an inherent responsibility for your spiritual development, but also for your educational enhancement. So you went to service, you ate dinner there at the church, and you went to Baptist Training Union. And you didn't just learn Bible, you learned writing and literature and history and math, all on Sunday. So environment became critical for developing young people in the community and protecting young people in the community. And some would say urban flight may have some contribution to the disintegration of all of that. That's a whole nother topic, but environment was very, very important, critical for me.
Yeah. The environment was important, I think, for anyone. No one's going to say that the environment isn't important. My immediate family, it was like, there's an article was written called Character Development in a Hostile Environment. Unlike Reverend Curtis, that it was a interesting environment. I was sort of, expression I use sometimes, that I was from it but not of it, perhaps, that there are things going on, but my life was always intact, you know. And one of the things that I never wanted to happen, and people like us are at risk, perhaps people like me, maybe even more so, is that people would say, well, you know, you came from such and such environment and you, quote, made it. Or how come the rest of them didn't make it? I was lucky. I had tremendous family support. I did have just brothers and sisters who, I was a baby boy by a long shot, like 10 years. Mother was 10, 12 years old. So I grew up pretty street smart because they were street smart and told me how to stay away from things. So I attribute it, you know, but in terms of, I think about one person, in terms of my mom, I mean, you know, everybody's mom's special. But everybody had bet on me. I said this in my notes to you guys, that when I got my doctorate, that I gave it to Mom like, she did pay for it, as a matter of fact, but I gave it to her. Here, Mom, you paid for it, you got it. Like, people ask me, would I feel elation when I finished? No, I felt relief that I hadn't let everybody down, because that was really, my mother said something, it's in the notes, it wasn't very good, but it really put me on the spot. My mother worked in the factory. She worked in like steel mill. She worked in the Saginaw Gray Iron Foundry. She worked there for 37 and 1/2 years. So one of my friends was working in the plant, and he saw my mom, and he says, well, where's Larry? He says, is he still in school? And Mom said, yeah. And he said, is he gonna spend all his life in school? And my mama says, well, when he finishes, he won't be carrying pipes like you. Her fronting somebody off like that, there's no way I could not finish school.
Great.
It had a lot of pressure, it really was. I felt relief. I was like,
Coming up next, the discussion continues here on Perspectives.